Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a good weekend. I hope you enjoyed deciding on the final plot that you're going to use for your short story that you're going to write later. So I'm excited to hear about all of those short story ideas and those plot ideas. Today, our objective is to analyze the impact of an author's choices by looking at the introduction and development of characters, the setting, and the order of action or the plot in the story. We're going to do that by first, we're going to just kind of get in the mode of thinking about plots and thinking about short stories. And so what we're going to do is we're going to share our short story topics with the small group, with our small groups, and then later maybe share a few to the whole class. You should have your plot, short story plots on paper ready to turn in at the end of the class, but keep those handy on your desk because you're going to use them for your small groups. Then we're going to review the plot of O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, and we're going to really think like an author and think about the craft of a story writing, what it involves. And then at the end of the class, we're going to do a quick write. And the quick write's going to be, how would you change the plot of the story? So what would you do differently to O'Connor's story? So first we're going to break up into groups, into our discussion groups, and we're going to share our plot ideas. But before you move, let's review really quick the different parts of a plot. So our first part of the plot is exposition. And what does exposition mean? Jasmine? Yes, it means introduction or setting. So it's setting up the story. Setting up the story for the action that's to come. What comes next? David. The rising action. Yeah, good. Rising action. What does the rising action do? Yeah, it builds up to the climax of the story. Very good. And now I just gave away the next one, which is the climax, right? Now what's the climax? It's what the story hinges on. That's right. Good job. Okay, so it's the part that's just pivotal. It's what the whole story is basically all about. And what comes after the climax? Mary? The falling action. All right. What does the falling action lead to? John. The resolution, that's right. And tell me about the resolution. Resolution. It ties up the whole story, brings everything together at the end. Now, the tricky thing about the resolution sometimes is that it's not always quite as clear. Like in our O'Connor story, sometimes your resolution isn't going to be the kind of pretty bow that you might think it might be, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. So I look forward to hearing from the resolution group, discussion group today. All right, so everyone go ahead and break up into your discussion groups. We'll do about 10 minutes and then we'll come back and convene. All right, so now that we're all gathered back together, would anyone like to share their plot ideas with the whole class? Yeah. Caleb, go ahead. Very nice. That's everyone that's given us now. Nice. Okay, who wants to share next? David, why don't you share next? Mm-hmm. Oh, very nice. Very nice. Let's give him a snap. All right. So now that we've shared a few of our plot ideas, let's go ahead and move on into the story, A Good Man is Hard to Find. Now, I know that we've already reflected on the story. We've thought about context. We've thought about meaning. We've read the story last week. Today, I want to look at it as a craftsman or as an author. I want us to think like an author. So we are actually going to break up into different discussion groups to discuss the different moving parts of this story. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's have us count off. So start with 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, very good. Now our groups are going to have different topics. I'm going to go ahead and write them on the board. Group 1, you're going to be discussing the exposition, or just how the story starts. So our question is going to be, how does the story start for group 1? What's our setting? Okay, I want group 1. If you're 1, I want you to go into that corner. Okay, group 2 is going to be discussing what happens while they're in the car driving. So what happens while in the car? All right, if you're in group 2, raise your hand. Okay, I want you all to go into that corner. All right, group 3. Raise your hand if you're in group 3. Okay, group 3, I want you to look in the book for the climax of the story. I want you to be able to show me the page number. Where is the climax in the story? And then finally, group 4, all you guys that are left over, you guys are going to be discussing the resolution of the story. I want you to open up that book and see where the resolution is, and give me some reasons why you think that's the resolution. You guys can go into this corner. All right, so now that we've come back together, we've discussed our different questions. Let's go ahead and start with group 1 and discuss, how does the story start? Yeah, so the story starts, the family is going on a trip, right? And the grandmother is trying to convince her son not to go to Florida, because who's in Florida? The misfit, correct. All right, so at the beginning of the story, we know they're going to go on a trip, and they're going to Florida, despite what the grandmother said, and there's a misfit, there's a criminal on the loose. Okay, group 2. It's group 2. Group 2, what did you guys discuss about what happens while they're in the car? Yeah, so the grandmother snuck the cat into the car. No one knows, right? They're on the way, and she begs to see this one historic home, and they go down this road. She says she knows it's on this road, but is there anything on that road? No. So they go down a desolate road, And what happens while they're on that road? They have a car crash. And there doesn't seem to be anyone that can help them around, except for maybe some sketchy people driving up in a car, which we later realize is the misfit, and they meet the misfit. And then what happens after the misfit gets there? What does he do with all the family members? He takes them away into the woods. Things are getting really sketchy. All right, so the action is rising. Things are going towards the climax. Right. Okay, now group 3. I want you to tell me, what do you think is the climax of the story? Do you happen to have a page number for that? Okay. Page 688, okay. Someone read that for me. Okay. So she says, the grandmother says, "Why, you're one of my babies. You're one of my own children." And then what does she do? She reached out and touched him on the shoulder. So she made a gesture. She actually reached out to him. And that's what the story hinges on. Is that change of heart, that clarity, and that finding of truth that the grandmother finds right before she's shot. Right. So our climax is the grandmother's, maybe you want to call it epiphany. And then she is shot. Okay. And then what about our resolution? Where's our resolution group? Okay, so what did you guys think that the resolution was? Now, some people may have different opinions on this one. Okay. So you guys thought that it was when the misfit said, "She would have been a good woman," the misfit said, "if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life." I think that's pretty arguable. It's almost like that idea of, you know, if you had a month left to live, what would you do with that? Well, she's put at this crisis point, and what does she do with the last moments of her life? Do you think that there might be an argument for a different resolution? Sam? Oh, by looking at her face after she was shot? Where is that? 688? Okay, let's see. Hiram and Bobby Lee returned from the woods and stood over the ditch, looking down at the grandmother, who half sat and half lay in a puddle of blood with her legs crossed under her like a child's, and her face smiling up at the cloudless sky. So when it says she's like a child and it's smiling up, it's almost like this innocence that's there, right? At the cloudless side, the sunny sky. So some might argue that that's the resolution. All right, very good job, you guys, discussing this very difficult piece. This very difficult short story. But we have kind of gone through and picked it apart to see what happens in the plot and how those events move the story along. we've looked at the craft of how O'Connor wrote this story to bring it to its resolution. And what was that resolution moment? I would say it's the grandmother's moment of grace. Either way, the fact that she was able to come to the truth in front of the misfit. That ties the story together. Very good job, you guys. All right, so to close up our class today, we're going to think about this story in terms of what we would want to do with this story. So let's say we got to be the writer of this story and we got to rewrite it the way we wanted it to end. How would we do that? So I want you to get out paper and pencil, and we're going to do a quick write. How would you change the plot of A Good Man Is Hard to Find? Give me at least one good paragraph.